Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to my classroom. I am Mrs. Armstrong, and I teach elementary art at Sequoia Elementary School in Claremore, Oklahoma. If you've missed the first two lessons, they are on YouTube. This is the YouTube title that you can look for. I've done a Monet and Pete the Cat, so if you're wanting to go back and if you've missed those two lessons, you can go back and look at those. Well, today I am introducing a new artist. She is a woman. She grew up and lived in Mexico, and more than half of her paintings were self-portraits. I'm wearing a portrait of her on my shirt. She always wore flowers or ribbons braided in her hair, and most of you probably know who she is. You've probably seen pictures of her, but you may not know her name. And her name is, forgot I have a clicker, is Frida Kahlo. And Frida was born in 1907, and she died in 1954 at the young age of 47. And as we go through the slideshow, you'll see some of the reasons why she died so young. She had a couple tragedies during her lifetime. This is an actual picture of her. She was a very beautiful woman. She was stunning. She loved her Mexican heritage and culture. And so most of the time when you saw Frida walking along the streets and the roads, she was dressed in her traditional Mexican outfit and always had her hair fixed with flowers and ribbons. And she was very beautiful. She did have very dark hair and dark eyebrows. And her eyebrows are kind of her trademark for most of her portraits. Her father always called her his little dove. She had an older sister and a younger sister, but she was the most like her father. And so in her self-portraits that she does of herself, you're going to notice that she brings her eyebrows together and they look like birds' wings. And that's kind of a way to show her dad that she's always thinking of him, and it's just kind of how she's always thought of herself as that little dove of her that her father always called her. So her father was German, her mother was Mexican, and he built them a beautiful house near Mexico City. It was about 30 minutes from Mexico City in a little town, and it was called La Casa Azul, and azul in Spanish means blue. So this is the blue house. And the blue house that she grew up in was actually shaped like a U, a block U. And so this is the front of the house. It's now a museum. But then it had sides that went off on both edges. And in that back area was a beautiful courtyard. And so this is where a lot of the trees are planted. And in Mexico, you know, there's parrots flying around and parakeets and monkeys and things like that. And so when Frida was young, she was very curious and she loved science. And so she was always bringing home little critters as pets that she would keep back there in the courtyard. Now, when she was around 6 years old, this was one of her first tragedies that happened to her in her life. She contracted a disease called polio. And polio would affect your lower extremities, and it would kind of paralyze you in a way, and you weren't able to walk. And so she didn't get to start school. She stayed at home, and her father worked with her to get her legs stronger and stronger and stronger. She did have to wear a brace on one of her legs. This is showing some children that had polio back in the day. Some of them are using crutches. Some have braces on both legs. There was a doctor in 1955 that actually developed a vaccine. So polio has kind of been eradicated. We don't have to worry about polio anymore, which is a good thing. But it was something that was pretty natural back in the day when Frida was young. And so Frida, one of her legs, she survived it. She got better. She got healthier, and her dad worked with her a lot. He put her in swimming and made her exercise her lower legs every day. And so she was able to walk. She did wear a brace. It did affect one of her legs. It made it really weak and thinner. And so she started wearing long dresses after that. So that, again, is a reason why she was always wearing dresses. So over time, she got to go to school. She was very, very smart. They said she had a photographic memory. That means if you see something or you read something, you remember it. So going through school, they saw how smart Frida was. So by the time she got to high school age, she actually qualified to go to a school in Mexico City, and it was called the National Preparatory School, and you had to qualify to get into this high school. There were only a total of 35 girls, and she was one of them that qualified to go to this school against 2,000 boys. And so at this time in her life, she loved science and she loved math. She decided to become a doctor. So about her second year of high school, third year of high school, she had to ride a bus, and it was about a 45-minute bus ride to and from the school to get back to her hometown. The bus was involved in this is her second tragedy now. The bus was involved in a very bad collision with a streetcar, and they didn't expect Frida to survive. She's done a painting. It's a little bit graphic. She's done a painting from that memory of that wreck. But in that wreck, she broke her spine. She broke her collarbone. She broke her pelvis. She broke her legs in a couple of places. And they didn't think she was going to survive. She was in the hospital for a couple of months. And then, of course, she ended back at the Blue House with her father taking care of her. Now she's 18 years old. She had to stay in bed for over a year. She was in a full body cast. And so this is when her father introduced her to painting, because all she could do was lay in bed. And so he, over her canopy bed, he put pictures, he put mirrors, and she has lots of pictures of her family around her. She worked with puppets. He devised an easel that was up over her head where her canvas could be attached, and then she laid her paint palette on top of her chest, and she began to paint. Now, most of the time, the only thing that she could see by looking up at that mirror was herself. And why she painted probably so many portraits of herself. So over time, here she is with a little child. She's painting, and he's watching. She's getting better. She's getting stronger. She is in a lot of pain, and she'll never be the same. But she does eventually get to a wheelchair, and then she's able to walk again. So there was a famous artist that had come to town. His name was Diego Rivera, and he paints huge murals on the walls about the Mexican tradition, things that had happened in the past that they were very proud of. And so she took one of her paintings to show Diego to see what he thought about her painting, because at this time in her life now, she's decided she doesn't want to be a doctor. She wants to be an artist. And she wants to find out, am I good enough to be an artist? So she takes a few of her paintings and shows them to Diego. And this one was his favorite one. It is a portrait of herself, and it's called Frida in the Red Velvet Dress. And so he starts coming to her house in the evenings when he gets off work from painting, and they start becoming friends, and he works with her a little bit on her artwork, and they end up falling in love. Well, Diego was more than half her age, and her father was not real happy with this, because remember, Frida was his little daughter that he called my little dove. And when he would look at Diego, he's kind of a tall man, he's a big round man, he told Frida he looks like an elephant. This is like a dove marrying an elephant. But over time, they fell in love with him. He treated Frida really well. He took care of Frida, and they did get married. She was 21 when she got married to Diego. When she did this portrait of herself and Diego, she compared Diego to being the artist. And then on her, she's got the dove above her head. Now, he was in demand in the United States to paint some murals, so they did come to the United States a few times, but they did end up in New York for a while, and she lived in New York. But most of the time, she was just kind of following him around, watching him paint. Here he is working on a huge mural. They've got a big scaffolding, and so she's kind of following him around. As she walks the New York streets, she is still in her traditional Mexico clothing with her hair fixed with flowers in her hair, and people would stop and stare because she was so beautiful and she looked so different walking down the streets in New York. But she was getting really sad because she was missing Mexico. And so Diego started getting her to paint some more. He started encouraging her, well, you just need to paint some more. Well, her paintings started becoming her feelings. She was putting her feelings into her artwork. This is one that she did while she was in New York, and it shows a lot going on in the back room that's representing New York. There's factories, there's the Statue of Liberty, there's the buildings, there's fires all the time. She's hearing sirens for ambulances, the garbage trucks, things that are going on. She's in New Mexico, and in this picture, she just has her dress. It's showing she's there, but her heart and soul is not there. She wants to be back in Mexico. And here's another one, kind of showing her feeling. This is her on the border of Mexico and the United States. Mexico over here with kind of the Mayan ruins, the flowers that are growing, and then she's holding the Mexican flag, and then over here is the United States, again with pollution and the buildings and the noise. Her heart is over here. And so finally, she's around 34. Her mother had already passed away. Her father just passed away. And Diego now is ready to retire. So they end back up at the Blue House, and that's where they're going to live. And so here are some actual photographs of them. Most of these are out in the courtyard. She brings in all of her little pets that she wants to be around because she loves nature. They have dogs. She's got a little deer that she takes care of. She has monkeys. She has birds. And these are all of her influences. Now that she's painting, they're more happy paintings with her and some of her animals. Towards the end of her life, around 45, she's in a lot of pain. She's kind of back in bed. It's really hard for her to get out of bed. Her body is kind of giving out because of all the accidents and things that she had gone through. So it's really hard for her to get out of bed now. And so she starts painting what are called still life pictures. And a still life, the definition is, shows objects such as flowers, food, or musical instruments. A still life reveals an artist's skill in painting shapes, light, and shadow. And so Diego would set things up on a table, and she would lay in bed and she would paint. So some of these she's put her little animals in, and still life with her fruit. She's got a bird. This one, still life with fruit, and she's got her little dog. This one is the last painting that she painted. It's of some watermelon, and engraved on the slice of watermelon it says Viva la vida, and that means long live life. And Frida died in 1954 at the age of 47. So our inspiration today for Frida is we're going to draw and color a parrot. One of her favorite animals was a parrot. And before we get started on this, I wanted to show the walking water from last week that didn't complete. So it's been sitting here now for over a week. And let's see if we can get this in the picture frame. And it has done its job. Can you see it? Right there. So last week we started with clear water, and we put in some drops of red. We skipped a container, drops of blue. We skipped the container and then did yellow. And then over the week, the colors have kind of walked to the other containers that were clear, and they've created the secondary colors. We started with the primary, And so now the blue and the red has made the purple, the red and the yellow has made the orange, and the blue and the yellow has made the green. So if you try this at home, it does take some time for this to happen. Okay, so we will get this out of the way. I am going to darken the background, and we are going to be ready to start our drawing. That right there? Okay, I'm going to be drawing with marker. I am going to get my glasses on so I can make sure I'm seeing okay. And there's a couple of things that you can do for your parrot. I did a couple of versions. So as we're drawing, you can kind of decide how you're wanting to do your Frida or your parrot. You're probably needing to draw with a pencil and have an eraser nearby. And I'll try to do the directions so we can do step by step. So we're going to start with the parrot's eye. So your paper should be long ways, going tall. And think about where your parrot's going to be, where his tail's going to be, and then where the branch is going to be. So kind of here's the middle, go up, and let's put in an eye, so a circle. And then you can put the two little circles on the inside. And if you want to, you can use your pencil to shade that in, or you can wait when you're using crayons or markers, how you want to do the eye on that. And then his beak. So we're going to do a V shape right along where the eye is. Now the beak is probably the hardest part, so don't get discouraged when you make your beak. Draw very lightly, so if you make a mistake, you can erase it. If you just can't get it right, then just pause on that. We'll finish the bird, and then you can come back and fix the beak because it's usually the hardest. It does have a little bit of a curve on the tip of it, so I just kind of curve it down. And you can put on a smaller beak, a longer beak, whatever you're wanting to do. And then you're going to bring it up a little bit and then curve it back to that center part of your V. And then the bottom beak, I'm just going to kind of just bring that in towards the bottom like that. It's kind of big. Probably shouldn't have made it that big, but that's okay. I've got marker, so I can't erase mine. So. All right, now his head. Now you can make his head all just a curve going around, or you can put the little feathers on it that stick up. I did this one first, and then I drew another one and put the little, makes him look like a cardinal. So kind of do whatever you're wanting to do on his head. So on this one, I might do a little bit of a crest on the top, kind of like drawing that. You just kind of curve it up. Add in a few little feathers, and then curve it down, and that's the back of his head. And then here is the front of his head. I'm just going to start right there and just kind of bring that down. Now his wings, we're going to make them look like hearts a little bit. So right here in the center, I'm just going to curve this one around and bring it down like a really long heart. And then on the other side, bring it down. You guys can turn on that other light if you need to, if you think this is too dark, since I turned that one off whenever I was doing the smart board. Now this wing's going to go a little longer than the first wing. And then we're going to do some little feather shapes here in the center. So I'm going to just kind of come down, back up. Come down, back up, go down, back up, and then this one's going to lead all the way down, and then this wing is going to kind of crisscross through the other wing like that. Looks like a broken heart. And then some of your feather, the color, if you're wanting the 3 colors or the 4 colors on these wings, you can kind of create these little feathers so that you can color them different colors. Right there where I've done the little down and up, that can be the little area that you can create the different colors of his feathers. I like colorful parrots. And you could look some up on the internet if you want to see some colors if you're wanting to add some colors to him. And then these are really long feathers that kind of end on his wings. So you can just kind of bring those down. Bring these across. Maybe one here in the center like that. And then his tail. We're going to do that main tail feather basically right here in the center. And then we'll do smaller feathers along the side. So I'm going to kind of just come in here and do like a main feather. And then off to the side, a little bit smaller and smaller. And then on the other side, make it kind of even with the last one. And I'm drawing from the side a little bit, so it makes it a little bit harder. And then you can do whatever you want to his face. This one, I did some little designs around it. This one, I just kind of did a little circle around it. And you can do those different colors if you want. Add some different colors to it. And then the branch, you can kind of just come up with a little wiggly line. You can make it branch off, back down. You can make this branch, the bottom of the branch, kind of come down. Make it come to a point there at the end. This could come on across. I think I'll indent that one in a little bit, and then this one might get smaller and smaller. You could branch off. And then the little leaves, the little football shape. That's how I kind of created the little leaves. You can put those leaves anywhere you want. Just be creative. Just little football shapes. And then if you want to put berries on, I just did those with my red marker. So I might add a little red marker on this. And then if you want texture to your tree trunk or your tree branch, not the trunk, sorry, you just draw some little lines and that'll create some texture to your branch. And then, of course, we need the branch to veer off over here. That might split here. And then I'm going to add a little bit of a branch here. And again, add some texture. And some leaves. And there's our parrot. And if you want to write Frida's name up here at the top. And then I'll write Parrot. Frida Kahlo's Parrot. And then you can choose whatever colors you're wanting to do. If you want to do this parrot in marker, you could do it in marker, crayons. These are a little bit different. The yellow came out really pretty on that one, so if you want to add some yellow to it. But this, you are free to use any colors that you'd like. You can close your eyes if you want and just choose a color and see what happens. So I picked out an orange, so I'm going to put a little bit of a, on his beak, there's a little bit of a little nose hole right there that you might want to add in. So this one, I might do kind of a red-orange. I may do a little bit of a color here on his beak, and then add yellow-orange. Always have to look, because you never know what you're pulling out of there. There we go. I think the other one was a little too red. And then you just start adding your colors. This one, let's try to stay in the lines when you color. But I am anxious to see how your parrots come out. Of a Facebook page. Is the Facebook page running along the bottom now? So it shows? It's on the website. Okay, so I didn't know for sure how that was going to work. I'll put it back up on the screen so you guys can see it. I'm going to use some green to color in the leaves. I'm going to leave my parrot blank right now because I want you guys to come up with your colors on what you're wanting your parrot to look like so that it's different than mine. I want to see all these different colors of parrots. And then next week, I'm going to pick a first, second, and third place of the ones that get sent in. And yours will be shown up on the smart board. And I'm wanting to see all the variety of colors of parrots that you guys come up with. And you can do a different tree branch. You can do more than one parrot. I want you to get really creative on this one. So color in your leaves, and if you want fall leaves, you can do fall leaves. You can get more leaves in the background if you'd like. But I do have a shout out that I'm wanting to do for some of the Sequoia students that have sent in their photos. Switch it right here. Can you get that, or does it need to be a little closer? All right, last week we did Pete the Cat. I love my white shoes. And Hayden from 4th grade sent me his picture. Macy from 2nd grade, she actually had a Pete the Cat book at home that she's showing next to her picture. I love how they did the background and added some things to their picture. And then Hank from 4th grade. Also, now he did his in markers, so it's a little bit brighter. They did a great job. And so I sent ribbons to them through the mail. I was able to get their address, and those are going out today. So if you will send me your pictures on Facebook, if you will find this group, Mrs. Armstrong's art class at Sequoia Elementary, Claremore, Oklahoma, you can send me those pictures. If you don't have Facebook, look through the school website, sequoiaeagles.net, and you can find my website and you can send it through there.
Good morning. Mrs. Woodson here, coming to you from Sequoia Elementary in Claremore, Oklahoma. I'm happy that I get to share with you again this morning a little library in your living room. I'm going to start off this morning with this book, written and illustrated. Well, it's written by two friends and illustrated by a friend. It's Aiden Ben Barak and Julian Frost are the authors and the illustrators. The title of this book is called Do Not Lick This Book. There's a little friends down here. It says, it's full of germs. We're going to find out why the author titled this book, Do Not Lick This Book. And when you're listening to it, I want you to think about what the author's purpose is. Did they write this book to entertain us? Is it fiction? Or did they write this book to inform us? Is it nonfiction? Do not lick this book. Can we see okay here, Mr. Trujillo? Title page, Do Not Lick This Book by Aiden Ben Barak and Julian Frost. And then it also says there are some scanning of electronic microscopic images by Lene Rudgren. This is men. Men is a microbe. She's small, very small. Can you see this dot? Microbes are so small that 3,422,167 of them could fit on it. Do you see the dot? Can you see the dot? 3,422,167 of men can fit on the dot. It's a lot. Microbes live everywhere, in the air, in your intestines, in your sock, on trumpets, at the bottom of the sea, Antarctica, underground, in your breakfast, inside this fish, on top of Mount Everest, up Santa's nose, just over there. Men lives in this book. And if you could look really closely. Here's the circle. Zooming in. You'd see her. This is a photograph of paper, really close up. I'm bored. Let's take men on an adventure. See the circle on the next page? That's where men lives. Touch the circle with your finger to pick her up. Men is now on your finger. Away we go. Where shall we take men first? Take me to your teeth. Okay, let's go. Open your mouth and carefully touch your front teeth with your finger. Don't do that. Don't put your fingers in your mouth. We're going to put our pretend on the teeth. Now, let's look really closely. This is a photo of a tooth really close up. How interesting. When I run my tongue across my teeth, it doesn't look like it would feel like this. It doesn't look like what it feels is what I'm saying. Smooth. It says, whoa, this place is weird. I'm Min. What are you guys up to? I'm Ray. We're digging cavities. Want to help? Can I get some acid over here? Yuck. Can you smell some toothpaste? Hey, kid, brush your teeth less and eat more candy. What a strange place teeth are when you look really closely. No wonder it's a good idea to brush them. It's time for men's next adventure. Touch your teeth to pick men up. I'm going to touch my tooth in the book to pick men up. Looks like you picked up Ray as well. Where shall we go next? Would you like to visit a shirt, Ray? Shirt? All right, let's explore your shirt. Put your finger on your shirt to send Min and Ray on a new adventure. Let's look really closely. This is a photo of fabric really, really close up. I'm Min, and this is Ray. We're on an adventure. Adventure. Nice to meet you. My name's Dennis. We're making this shirt smell. Gross. I found a clean patch. Dennis, there's some lovely filth down here. Can you give me a hand spreading this dirt around? What's a hand? I hope we don't get put in the wash for a few more days. What a strange place shirts are when you look really, really closely. No wonder they need washing. Now it's time for Min and Ray's next adventure. Touch your shirt to pick them up. Dennis has come along for the ride. We have time for one more trip. Where shall we go? Shall we visit a belly button, Dennis? What's a belly button? Okay, off we go. Put your finger in your belly button and wiggle it about. Now, let's look really, really closely. Wow, this is a photo of skin. Really, really close up. Hello, we're Min, Ray, and Dennis. This shirt is weird. I'm Ray. I'm Jake. Welcome. We don't get many visitors. Help yourselves to a delicious chunk of dead skin. Ah, I do enjoy a nice drink of sweat on a hot day. Did I tell you about the soap that got all the way in here? Oh, I don't like scary stories. What a strange place skin is when you look really, really closely. No wonder it gets itchy. Put your finger back in your belly button and pick up Min and her friends. That was fun. Now I'd like to go back to my book, please. Can we come? What's a book? Let's put Min and her friends back in this book. Here comes the fingerprint. Here I go. Here's a good spot. There's plenty of room for everyone. Where will you take Min tomorrow? Look what the finger picked up along the way through this book. She picked up 3 other microbes to add to the page in this book. Do you think that's why the author titled the book, Do Not Lick This Book? One more page. It says, what are microbes? What do they really look like? Microbes are so small that nobody knew that they even existed until microscopes were invented. They came in all sorts of odd shapes, but they don't have faces, feet, or hands, and they can't really talk. Sorry, Min. Min is an E. coli microbe. E. coli live happily in your intestines. That's your stomach area. But they are very good at spreading when you don't wash your hands too well. E. coli, that's what it looks like under the microscope. Streptococcus bacteria live in lots of places, including your mouth, eating sugar and giving off acid that can dissolve your teeth. Streptococcus, that was Ray. Dennis is a fungus. His real name is Aspergillus niger. You probably picked him up while you were playing outside. Look at this guy. He's a corny bacteria. Oh, that's kind of funny. Corny bacteria live on lots of places, including your skin. They are big fans of dirt. I think we know why they said do not lick this book. And don't put your finger on your teeth when you're reading it. Ick, no way. Take a look right here. It says that we didn't know these things existed until the invention of this little tool that scientists use. And my science book is under the easel as a prop, so we won't be pulling that one out with the microscope on it. But here's the microscope. Good thing I have him. It's a tool that scientists use right under here, and I've seemed to misplace my slide, moving things around. But there's a little glass rectangle that slips under this. And scientists use the mirror to reflect light up through the lens, and they look through the eyepiece, and this is how they can see Min and Jake and Ray, through a microscope. The man that had a significant role in helping the development of the microscope is this man's name right here. Can you say it? Read it and see if you can say it. Try it. Can you see it, Mr. Trujillo, enough to read it? His name, do you have it? Because it took me a while to get it. Can you see me or am I too close? I'm good. His name was Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek. He was born in 1632. I have a picture of him. Let's take a look at him. And you can tell that Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek wasn't from 2020. He was born in 1632. Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek had a common childhood. His father was a basket maker, and his mother, well, she came from a family, and her brothers and father, they made a brewery. They made wines and beers. As Anthony grew up, he did not have a formal higher education. He went to school and with the other children in his neighborhood, but he didn't have a formal higher education. As he grew to be older, as his occupation, he became a draper. And a draper was someone who dealt with fabrics and materials like you see at Walmart on the bolts that someone sews together. Well, a draper was what he did. He traded in cloths and tapestries and rugs and those kinds of things. That was his occupation. He had a shop in the town that he lived in. Well, as a young man, he was a curious person, and he loved to read. And someone came along named Robert Hooke, who was a formal scientist, a scientist that had done something that Anthony was very much interested in. He had been using a microscope, the very beginnings of a microscope, compound microscopes. Way back in 1595 is when the first ones were invented. And they were looking at things under these microscopes. And Robert Hooke, who happened to be Sir Isaac Newton's right-hand man, was doing these investigative looks through these lenses, and he was drawing images, and he wrote a book. And guess who got a hold of that book? Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek. And he got so intrigued by reading Robert Hooke's book that he decided to take up the hobby of lens grinding. Lens grinding, where you would take like the lenses of your glasses or your sunglasses, they were clear, and Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek would grind the lenses and make them magnified. What he was able to do was get his lenses to be ground to magnify something up to the power of 200 times. Robert Hooke didn't even have a microscope that could do that. His microscopes were only magnifying things 20 and 30 times. Anthony kept his lenses to himself, and he began recording the things that he saw with his microscope. Let me show you what his microscope looked like. This is like a replica. He turned his drawings and things in later as he recorded the things that he detailed and saw under the lens of his microscope. This is the lens. This is the stand that he used, and it had this is how you adjust it, and here's your little focus knob that would bring things into focus for him. And this little pen right here was the sample holder. He would look under pond, he would look at pond water, he looked at blood, capillaries, he discovered all kinds of interesting things. Leeuwenhoek microscope, you can buy one of these today if you're interested in getting one. They're around $100, the replicas. But his drawings and writings were turned into the Royal Society at that time. That would be like the Royal Society of London, like the King and Queen. And they kept his papers and drawings and microscopes. And we still have, I think 10 of them are still around today. He ended up actually making over 500. Here's a man looking through the size. It's kind of interesting what patience that man had to take that tiny little lens and put it up to his eye and look at those specimens and record what he saw. I have a picture, a primary source document of what he was actually seeing when he looked through his microscope. You might enjoy looking at this. This is his actual handwriting. This is tartar off your teeth. The thing that Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek is so famous for, even though he didn't have a formal education, he became known as a scientist because he is the first person who ever recorded seeing bacteria under a microscope. And this is tartar off of teeth that he took off his very own daughter, just like we read about in the book. So cool. I'm not sure what these bacteria are, but these are living organisms that he would see under the lens that he would hold that tiny little device up to and look. Amazing. And then he would draw out, and then underneath he would write a paragraph about what it looked like, especially when the things were moving. I read a paragraph about him seeing pond water under a microscope and how excited he was when he saw the different things swimming across the screen right before his eyes. That Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek. I'm thankful for him and his discovery. He made 500 different microscopes. This little one goes from the power of 100. The scientist can look through it and see 200. And then this little microscope goes all the way up to 450 times. I did a little research and looking into the strength of microscopes, and I want to say 1,000 times is one thing I saw. They use light, really intense light, to also called nanoscopes that really today blow up things magnificently. But it all came from his concept of being able to grind those lenses and magnify things far greater and closer than even Robert Hooke could do, who was a real scientist. And that's what I love about this guy. He was a common guy who got curious from a book, and he became famous for seeing the very first form of bacteria under a microscope. Let's take a look at a few of these nonfiction books, because we've got a virus going around right now. That's why we're not at school, right? Yeah. And you're going to be surprised at what scientists today are saying about that virus. A couple of little things that they're saying. But before we talk about that, let's look right here at this little nonfiction book. Here is what a cold virus would look like if we could slide it under that microscope, zoom it in, right? You could zoom it in. That's how the doctors can tell when they take that swab of your throat with a Q-tip, right? That's how they can tell what kind of virus you have. They zoom in, and it says right here, just a couple of pages. I'm not going to read the whole book to you, just a few things. It says right here, and a cold is an illness caused by a virus. A virus is a tiny germ, like men from the book we read earlier, right? It enters in your body through your mouth or your nose. Once inside, the virus copies itself over and over again. The virus attacks your body, but your body fights back. You start to feel sick when it does that, and you can show signs of a cold. That's the virus. It says right here in this little fast fact, because this is a nonfiction book, this is a caption, it says that there are more than 200 different kinds of viruses that can cause colds. That's a lot. Here's something I want you to hear, because we're going to read this a couple of times. Check this out. It says, kids get colds. Sneezing and coughing spread colds. The virus can get on your hands. And then the virus can spread to whatever you touch. Your friend can pick up a virus by touching what you touched. He may touch his mouth, his eyes, or his nose, and then the virus gets inside his body. That's the cold virus. Check this one out. There's more in there, but I want you to hear the common thing that's going from flu to strep. Let's look at this flu. That's what it looks like under the microscope. That's how the doctor knows. He's not guessing. He takes that swab of your throat, puts it in the microscope, and they look, and it says, oh, he's got the flu. The flu. Here's some first facts about the flu. Let's take a look inside. What is the flu? The flu or influenza is an illness caused by a virus. A virus is a tiny germ. Flu viruses copy themselves over and over inside your body. And as your body fights the virus, you will feel achy. Fact, people get the flu from 3 kinds of viruses. Here's another microscopic picture of the virus, the flu. Here's Dad taking care of it. This boy's body is fighting it off. That's what we want it to do, because your body usually wins. Right here. I want you to hear this. How do kids get the flu? Check this out. People with flu sneeze, cough, and breathe viruses in the air. And then other people get the flu by breathing in these flu viruses. Flu viruses are also spread by touching people who have the flu. Virus gets into the body, and when people touch their mouth, their nose, or their eyes, they get the virus. That's the flu. One more, because I really want you to get this. Strep throat. Under the microscope, the doctor slides it under. Nope, they don't have a cold. Nope, they don't have the flu. They have strep throat. And then he knows what he can do about it. Let's take a look. Strep throat. Do you know what I'm going to tell you? What is strep throat? There it is, that microscopic picture again. Streptococcus bacteria. That's the label. It's a nasty sore throat. Ooh. Strep throat is an illness caused by bacteria. Bacteria are tiny germs. The bacteria that causes strep is Streptococcus, or short for strep. Strep throat happens when tube grows inside the mouth. The bacteria causes an infection. The throat starts to swell and hurt. In fact, some kinds of bacteria live in the throat all the time. That means it's a good bacteria. But usually these good bacteria do not hurt the body. Guess what I'm going to read? I'm going to read to you. You know what I'm going to read to you. How do kids get it? Kids get strep by being near people who have it. People with strep may sneeze or cough bacteria into the air, and other people breathe it in. People can catch strep by touching things an infected person has handled. Sharing forks, cups, or straws can also spread the bacteria. That's how we can pick up strep. Now, I'm just wondering, while you're sitting there in your living room and you've heard this information, because these are nonfiction books, I hope you caught on. Even Men was nonfiction. That author used a funny little bacteria microbe with hands and feet to teach us about microbes. But the thing about it is, it's all nonfiction. Did you hear what they're trying to tell you to do to keep yourself safe? Did you hear? Here's a virus that we're talking about right now. This is the COVID virus. Wait a minute. I don't have a book yet about this virus. You know why? Because the doctors right now, today, every day, they're using this tool that Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek helped us with the lenses. They're using this tool to put the COVID virus under the microscope. And they're checking it out. And they're studying it every single day, all day long, like your dad and mom when they go to work. And they're working hard to get information about it so we can get back to school. Check this out. You know one thing they've said about the COVID virus? Just like all of these viruses right here, that if you take this stuff right here, it's made up of mainly alcohol. If you squirt it on the virus, do you know what happens? It starts to dry it out. Just like all of these viruses, that alcohol will dry it out. It breaks the outside membrane, just like it dries your hands out. I don't know about you, but I haven't been having to put a lot of lotion on my hands because my hands are dry. That's what this alcohol does to the outside of that COVID virus. And guess what it does? Dries it up and kills it. Good news. Watch this. There's another thing you can do. And you know how scientists know this? Because they watched it under a microscope. And guess what they squirted on it under the microscope to see what happens? Hand sanitizer. Guess what else you can do? Wash your hands. Keep your hands clean. They use the very same thing. They put it on the virus and they looked at it under a microscope, the high-powered lens, and they could see. One last thing that book said over and over again: just don't touch your nose, your eyes, or your mouth. That's some really, really good advice. I bet if you go in your cabinet at home, you might have a clear plastic cup. Just real quick, we're going to make our own little magnifying glass today. Clear plastic cup, put a little water in the bottom of it. I have an old catalog here. Any old magazine, catalog, anything that you don't care if it gets maybe a little water on it. Look through the bottom of it without the water in it and check the letters out. And then put a little water in it and look. See what happens as water does a little magnifying of those letters. Does it make it bigger? Does it make it smaller? Does it make it look weird? Try cups, baby food jars, anything that Ziploc baggie, anything with clear, lay it flat out and notice, make some observations. Because you know what? That's what Anthony Van Leeuwenhoek did. He got curious about Robert Hooke's book. And I hope that this might cause you to get a little curious too from the observations that you make. I can't wait to see you next Tuesday. I hope you're enjoying your springtime, and I'll see you soon.
good morning. It's Mrs. Owens again from Sequoia Elementary. It's good to see you again today. I just wanted to share with you a story today that I absolutely fell in love with the first time I read it. I laughed out loud when I read the book, and I found it to be quite entertaining, and I hope that you will as well. We're going to listen with intention this morning, and we're going to focus on the ELA concept of personification. I want you to look at the screen, and I want you to look at the word personification and study it a little bit. And do you see any small word right at the beginning of the word personification? Can you see a smaller word there? Do you see the word person? I bet you did. I bet that's what you were seeing, wasn't it? Well, personification is when you give an animal or an object qualities or abilities that only a human can have. This is a creative literary tool that adds interest and fun to poems and stories. Personification is what writers use to bring non-human things to life. It's such a fun tool. In third grade, we've talked a lot about figurative language, different kinds of figurative language, different ways of writing so that our writing is interesting and fun to read. We talked in, I believe, the first story about Nerdy Birdie, we talked about the similes in Nerdy Birdie. And in our classroom, we've talked about metaphors and idioms and hyperboles. Well, personification kind of fits in that category. It's a way of making your writing interesting. Here's some examples of some personification. Lightning danced across the sky. Now, lightning doesn't really dance, does it? But if you think about it, if you've ever watched a lightning storm from the safety of your home, you've seen those bolts as they come down from the cloud and maybe strike the ground. Lots of times it looks like they're dancing. Here's another one. The stairs groaned as we walked on them. Now, if you can see the picture clearly enough, it says, oh, grunt, ugh. Well, they don't really sound like that, but my grandmother had a bedroom on the second story when I was a little kid, and my uncle lived up there. And I remember you couldn't sneak up there to save your life because every time you'd step on those old wooden stairs, they would creak. It reminds me kind of like a haunted house, stairs that groan. And in this instance, they groaned as we walked on them. Here's another example. The moon smiled at the stars in the sky. Have you ever looked outside and you saw the moon and it almost looked like it had a face? Did it look like it smiled? That's personification. Now, lots of writers and lots of different careers use personification. Get a load of this one. Have you ever seen this character before? Have you ever seen the M&Ms? Sure you have. M&Ms are chocolate candies with a hard outer covering. And they used to say they melt in your mouth, not in your hand. But look at the character of the M&M. They've given the character human features, given him arms and legs, and I think this one has an attitude. Here's another example of personification. Oh, look. The Geico Gecko. In my classroom right now, if I was showing this to my students, I'd break out and I'd say, oh, matey, would you like a spot of tea? Buy insurance? Well, my friend Cole that was in my class really didn't like it whenever I'd break out in my poorly accented voice. But that's exactly what they have done. Advertisers oftentimes will give those human characteristics to things that aren't. How about this one? Oh, don't all kids know Chester Cheetah? Sure you do. What does he advertise? Cheetos. We all love Cheetos, don't we? Another one is this one. Look at this one. Who always wins, or what always wins? Gatorade. Look at the Gatorade bottle. When I first saw this, I thought the Gatorade bottle I thought they were playing football, but they're really not. This is a racetrack, and the Gatorade bottle is breaking the tape as the winner. Gatorade always wins. What about this one? What is Milk's favorite cookie? Now, it's not the Oreo is Milk's favorite cookie, but the Oreo is not what's been personified here. What's got human characteristics here? It's the milk. The milk has a favorite cookie. So we can see that personification is a tool that's used all around us. We see it every day. We just need to learn how to use it ourselves. Something else I'd like for you to kind of watch, we're going to talk about as we go through this story, is we're going to talk about story elements. Story elements of fiction writers. These are the 5 essential elements that you'll see in a story. And these 5 essential elements just allow the story to develop in a way that makes sense to the one who reads it. In other words, these 5 things are always found in stories. Characters. There's always a setting. It always tells us where the story takes place. It's interesting in this particular book because the setting changes multiple times. There's always a plot. The plot being the gist of the entire story. What is the story going to be all about? What drives the story? In fiction writing, there's a problem. The characters experience some sort of problem in a fiction story. And then there's finally a conclusion or a solution to the problem. And that's how it wraps up. So as we read today, I want you to be aware of, okay, who are the characters, or what are the characters? Where's this taking place? What is the problem? And then when we get to the end, let's see if we can't find that solution. So with that being said, let me get to the book. I can't wait. I'll get my glasses on so I can read correctly. Now I'm going to share with you the story today of the legend of rock, paper, scissors. Now immediately a lot of little thought bubbles are going up in your heads because that's called schema. Many of you know about this game because all around. I bet you've played it before at home or maybe in your classroom. Well, Drew DeWalt wrote this book of the legend of rock, paper, scissors. It's not a how-to book on how to play the game. Not at all. He created a story using those 5 essential elements, but about something very familiar to us. The pictures in the book were done by Adam Rex. Phenomenal job. I can't wait for you to see them. Now, as I open to the title page of the book, I want you to notice something. At the bottom, the writer said 1, 2, 3. Think about that. Rock, paper, scissors. Wonder why at the bottom of the very first page it would say 1, 2, 3. Have you got it figured out? That's exactly how you play rock, paper, scissors. 1, 2, 3, boom. And you show which character you're picking. 1, 2, 3, shoot, sometimes we say. Well, that's exactly what the writer did when they wrote the book. 1, 2, 3, go. And there is our dedication page. As I was looking through the dedication page, this book was written for Henry. And I didn't really think that much about it when I first looked at it. I always like to peruse everything in the book when I get a new book. And I bought this book for myself because I liked it so much. But I noticed that it was written for Henry. And I thought, I wonder who Henry was. Henry comes back in a very obscure place in the story. I'll point it out to you when we get there. So here we go. Long ago, in an ancient and distant realm called the Kingdom of Backyard, there lived a warrior named Rock. Rock was the strongest in all the land, but he was sad because no one could give him a worthy challenge. Now, right off the bat, we are already setting, right? Where are they? They're in the Kingdom of Backyard. That's exactly right. We already have met one of the characters. This is what happens in most books. Character development is oftentimes in the first few pages of a book. In this book, however, you're going to see characters introduced all the way throughout. So here we are in the Kingdom of Backyard. Rock traveled in the Kingdom of Backyard to the mysterious forest over by the tire swing. so it changed a little, where he met a warrior who hung on a rope holding a giant's underwear. "Drop that underwear and battle me, you ridiculous wooden clip man." "I will pinch you and make you cry, rock warrior." Now, who do you think the ridiculous wooden clip man is? Can you see? And look at the giant's underwear. Now, remember I told you that this book was written for Henry, a boy named Henry? Well, I noticed on these tidy whities, on the band of the tidy whities, guess whose name is there? Henry. I don't know. I don't know who Henry is, but I bet there's a connection. I bet there's a connection. So, did you think the ridiculous wooden clip man was Clothespin? Yeah, you were right. Rock versus Clothespin. Rock is victorious. Look at how Rock just blew that clip man to smithereens. Not even a contest. I want you to look at Rock. I did a little background research, too, on the characters of the book. And they said Rock, when the guy developed the character of Rock, he called him he had a blunt attitude, and he was very dogmatic, very straightforward, just went right in and fought. That was the kind of character that he wanted Rock to be. Well, even though he had won, Rock still was still unsatisfied. That means he wasn't satisfied. So he journeyed on to the mystical tower of Grandma's favorite apricot tree. So he gets to Grandma's favorite apricot tree. That had special meaning to me and my schema because my grandmother had an apricot tree right out her backyard. In her backyard. I loved that apricot tree. It was very easy to climb it, and I liked the taste of apricots. Well, there he was met by an odd and delicious fruit. So he met this fruit. Now, if your parents are listening, I hope they close their ears because this is what he said. "You, sir, look like a fuzzy little butt." "What?" "I challenge you to a duel." "Then let us battle." Oh, my goodness. Well, Apricot's not afraid, is he? They're going to battle. Rock versus Apricot. Oh, and they go at it. That is an angry Apricot. "I will beat you, Rock, with my tart and tangy sweetness." And they get after it. Who do you think won? Yes, Rock is victorious. Ugh, I'm smooshed. And yet, smooshing you has brought me no joy. Rock is just not happy at all. So here he is in his backyard. It took me a little while to figure out who he was yelling at. But if you look at the backyard, he's looking at all of these other friends in the backyard, and he just looks at them and screams, "Are you not entertained?" And it said that they were entertained, but the battle had been too easy. So Rock left the kingdom of backyard, still in search of a worthy foe. What would be a synonym for foe? What do you think? If he was looking for somebody to challenge him, so what might be a synonym for foe? Might be a challenger, might be an enemy, might be another contestant, but he's leaving the kingdom of backyard. So if you haven't figured it out, we're going to get a setting change, aren't we? And sure enough, we do. Meanwhile, in the empire of Mom's home office, on a lonely and windswept desk mountain, a second great warrior sought the glory of battle. And this is the second great warrior. His name was Paper. Now, when they designed paper, the author decided that paper should be very smart and intelligent and very wise, could do lots of things. So think about that Paper. He looks pretty innocent there, sitting on top of Desk Mountain. And it says that even though he was the smartest warrior in all the land, he was also sad because no one could outwit him. Now, wasn't that the same problem that Rock had? Nobody could beat rock. So there's another one of those essential elements. That was the problem that rock had. He couldn't find anyone to battle that could beat him. That paper is having the same problem. He set out across Desk Mountain to find his match, and there he met a large and square monster. I want you to, can you see the monster really closely? Look at the monster. What do you think that is on a desk? Any idea? I gobble up the likes of you and spit them out every day, little paper. Oh, then taste my fury, giant box monster. Paper versus computer printer. No, not a paper jam. Paper is victorious. Now, if you're an adult, you understand paper jam. The computers, the printers that sit in our classrooms, when they get jammed up with paper, oh, it's awful. But not this time. Paper caused it and it's victorious. So the printer didn't work. Having beaten the fiercest fighter on Desk Mountain, Paper climbed down to the pit of office trash bin. Now, if you haven't figured that out, Paper's going to go down here to the trash can. And that's where he battles the most terrifying horde of creatures in all the land. A half-eaten bag of trail mix. Ugh. Look, half-eaten bag of trail mix. And Paper jumps right in. He's not afraid at all. Paper versus half-eaten bag of trail mix. Oh, foul wizard, he's blotted out the sun. Run for your lives, laddies. So there they go. Man, there wasn't even a contest there. They are running for the exits as fast as they can. Paper looks a little bit angry there, though, I think. I don't know what's wrong with... I don't know. He wins again, though, right? Sure he did. Paper wins again. Can no one beat me? And so, with a heavy heart, Paper departed the empire of Mom's home office, and off he walks, very glum and sad, just like Rock. Have you figured out what you think might happen next? Are we going to have a setting change? Do you think we'll meet another character? Do you think you know who the character is? You probably do. You probably do. At the same time, in the kitchen realm, in the tiny village of Junk Drawer, there lived a third-grade warrior, and they called her Scissors. Now, this is where I laughed out loud, because when I was a kid, we had this so-called drawer at our house, a junk drawer. And it was full of all kinds of junk. There were rubber bands and nails and screws and things you couldn't even identify. And, I got married and I moved into my own home. And lo and behold, if one of these drawers didn't happen in my house too. A junk drawer of all things. Well, that's where Scissors came from. She lived in junk drawer. Their junk drawer looks a little bit better than mine did. Mine was truly junk. And they made her female. I don't really know why, but they did. And she was really quick and really fast is how the author described this character. She was the fastest blade in all the land. She, too, was unchallenged. And on this day, her first opponent was a strange and sticky circle man. Now, can you see what the strange and sticky circle man was? Look up there. She says, "Let us do battle, you tacky and vaguely round monstrosity." And he says, "I'll battle you and I'll leave you beaten and confused with my adhesive entangling powers." Yep, it was a roll of tape. I don't know. That might be pretty damaging to a pair of scissors. Scissors versus roll of tape. Scissors is victorious. Okay, well, Scissor forged on across the kitchen realm to the frigid wastes of refrigerator freezer. And there she met her most fearsome adversaries yet. Ooh, synonym. Adversary would be another synonym for foe. Ooh, I love it, how they share different words. Yet, it says she encountered dinosaurs made of frozen breaded chicken. Chicken nuggets in dinosaur shapes. Now, those ought to be pretty good fighters. I mean, dinosaurs, I would think. I have come from the far reaches of kitchen to battle you, oh bizarre, yummy breaded dinosaurs. Bow before our child-pleasing shapes and flavors, Sword Master. No one can resist our crunchy awesomeness. Scissors versus dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets. Dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets win? Maybe that's how he changed the story. No! Wait, no, they don't. Scissors is victorious again. Am I so good that not even dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets can beat me? And so, Scissors, like rock and paper before her, traveled beyond her own kingdom, seeking out a challenger who was her equal. So once again, now we have our three main characters and a number of supporting characters throughout the story. Now we know what their problem is. They're all suffering with the same problem. I think we're reaching the end of our book, don't you? What do you think is going to happen next? Let's see. Then one day, in the great cavern of two-car garage. So now they're in the two-car garage, and they are going to encounter one another. Rock and Scissors came face to face. She looks a lot bigger than he does. And she says, I hope you're wearing your battle pants, Rock Warrior. And he says, if by battle pants you mean no pants, but I'm willing to fight you, then yes, I'm wearing my battle pants, weird scissory one. Do you know who wins between Rock and Scissors? Oh, it was a big fight. Rock versus Scissors. Looks like they got rockets going off. Man. An epic and legendary battle ensued, but ultimately Rock is victorious. You've made me so happy by beating me. Ugh, I wish I felt your joy, Scissors, for I have yet to meet a warrior who can beat me. Hi there. In pops paper. Those are fighting words. Wait, what? Paper's a little bit caught off guard. Rock versus paper. Look. Rock goes down. Paper's right there on top. This is the best day of my life. Thank you for winning, oh great knight of paper. Well, that's fine for you, but it looks as though no one will ever beat me. Not so fast, paper. Wait, what? Oh, look. Scissors versus paper. You beat me. And the three great warriors hugged each other. We didn't have social distancing then. And they danced for joy, and they became fast friends, and they had each met their matches. They were so happy, in fact, that they began to battle again and again. Round and round they went in the most massive and epic three-way battle of all time. And it is said that this joyous struggle still rages on to this very day. And that is why children around the world in backyards, on playgrounds, and yes, even in classrooms, still honor the three great warriors by playing rock, paper, scissors. Love, love, love it. Let's play. Ready? I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. And then you show me what you got. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. I'm scissors. Are you rock? Are you paper? Gotcha. Fun game. Fun game to play. Now, I think we've already pretty much identified all of our essential elements that we have, our plot, our setting, and so forth. We know now a lot about personification. I love that part of this book. Here's how I want you to take it a little bit further, okay? Well, I forgot about that. I was going to take you back to our lesson on theme. Winning isn't everything, and making friends is the greatest victory. I want to scoot on through to taking it a little deeper. All right, here are some things that I'd like for you to try to do. The first one says, create a cartoon with 2 battling objects. Now, a cartoon can be created on anything that looks like this. So make your own cartoon. How about writing a legend that personifies an object? Find something that doesn't have life and breathe life into it. Or develop a game that can be played with minimal props. Something like rock, paper, scissors that maybe people around the world will play someday because you created it. What a great thing to do. It's been fun. I love sharing the story. It's been a great day today. I hope that you have a great rest of the week, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Helbig, and I am the Family and Consumer Science teacher here at Sequoyah High School. And today our episode is called Measuring Up. We are going to be making some snickerdoodles today and talking about our measuring tools and some terms, techniques, all kinds of things today. So I need you to listen fast because I've got to go fast today. First thing we're going to do is we are going to wash our hands as always and sing the happy birthday song because yesterday was my birthday. So happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to me. Okay. Old. So I knew somebody would ask, how old are you? And I'm old. So that's the answer to that. Okay. So we are going to make snickerdoodles like I said. The recipe is out there on your Google Classroom. Now, there's not very many people here to help me eat them except for I do have a few people that are helping, and the chips are definitely a smaller amount than we had when we started, but that's okay. They've already been taste testing, and they say it's good. So I'm going to make half a recipe today. So as we're talking, we're going to also talk about measuring techniques and having recipes, terms, and all that good stuff. So we're going to start with measuring shortening. There's a couple of ways to measure shortening, and one of those ways is the stick method, okay? The shortening comes already in a stick, so we're just going to cut it. And we need 1 cup of shortening. However, if I'm going to half the recipe, then I need a half a cup of shortening. The recipe also says that I need to use part Crisco and part margarine. So that means I need 1/4 of a cup of margarine and I need 1/4 of a cup of the shortening. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 tablespoons is 1/4 of a cup. That's an important equivalent that we need to know, that there's 16 tablespoons in a cup. So we've said that one over and over during our lessons together. And I need 4 tablespoons here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to cut right there and save this other piece for another day. So I'll go ahead and put that in. There are 2 other ways to measure shortening. That's the stick method. The other 2 ways to measure shortening are simply the pack method, and I'm going to go ahead and use one of these dry measuring cups to do that. And I've got some shortening here that's we're going to kind of give double duty to. Instead of using some brand new shortening, I'm going to use some that I played with and I used it as practiced with the other day. So I'm just going to take some shortening and I'm just going to pack it down in my dry measuring cup, and I really want to pack it in there well. And then after I've packed it in there, I'm going to level that off, and that would be my 1/4 of a cup, okay? Now, the reason I'm using this old shortening is because I'm going to show you a third way to measure shortening, and that's the water displacement method. And you take a liquid measuring cup and 1 cup of water, and then you put the shortening in there. Now, what do you think happened to my water level when I put this shortening down in there? It's going to rise. We're not going to eat this shortening. We're just playing with it. It's kind of a neat little science experiment. Because of its density, which we learned about in another class, that rises. And you just keep putting shortening in there until it rises to the level 1 cup plus whatever. So this is going to be 1 cup, like right around 1/4 of a cup, okay? 1 1/4. So that tells me that I have 1/4 of a cup of shortening. All right, so let's just put those things to the side there. Okay, so now we have our shortening in our bowl. The next thing we need to measure is our sugar. So let me get that shortening off of my fingers. And before I forget, I need to preheat my oven. So I'm going to bake, and I'm going to put that up to 400. And I'm going to push start. So that'll be ready for us when we get these cookies done. Okay, so to measure sugar, it's a dry ingredient. I'm going to use a dry measuring cup. And it calls for 1 1/2 cups. Well, I want to half it, so I'm going to use 3/4 of a cup. So to measure out 3/4 of a cup of sugar, I'm going to use a 1/4 measuring cup, level it off, and give it a little shake, but I'll go ahead and give it a little 1, 2, and 3 1/4 cups makes 3/4 cup of sugar. Another way to measure that would be 1/2 of a cup and 1/4 of a cup. Both of those ways would get what we needed. Okay, The next thing we need to put in here, it says to mix the shortening, the sugars, and the eggs together. So I need 1 egg. I'm going to check my egg over, make sure it looks good. I'm going to have a separate bowl. Whenever you measure eggs, you need to have a separate bowl and crack it into that bowl, because if you accidentally got a shell in there or if something didn't look right, which we're good, no chick today, so we're ready to put that in there. And start mixing that up. Okay, so that's mixing. While that's mixing, let's talk about the flour and measuring flour. There's 2 ways to measure flour. The first way we want to talk about is the sifting method. So we're just going to put some flour into our sifter and sift it into a separate bowl. Okay, and then we're just going to spoon that into our measuring cup. And this recipe says that I can use the sifting method or I can use the dipping method. The dipping method simply means that I'm going to dip my measuring cup into the flour and level it off. Okay, so there's 1 cup. And I'm going to start with that. The sifted I need to put into my tablespoons, because my recipe calls for 2 3/4 cup of flour. If I have 2 3/4 cup of flour, I get 1 cup, which I just put in here with the dipping method, and 6 tablespoons. So, Mrs. Helbig, how do you know it's 6 tablespoons? Well, I know it's 6 tablespoons because I know there's 16 tablespoons in a cup, so there's 12 tablespoons in 3/4 of a cup. Half of 12 is 6. So I better stop talking so that I won't mess up this counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and get some more in there, 6. So I've got one cup plus 6 tablespoons. So there's my dry ingredients, which is in a separate bowl. Now, I just want to mix this together. I don't want to whip it or beat it to death or anything, so it's good. I'm just going to turn that off and let that sit there for a second. Okay. Now, the other dry ingredients that I need to put into this bowl will include 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. So if I'm halving the recipe, I need 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And again, I'm just going to level that off. 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar. And I need 1 teaspoon of soda. So half of 1 teaspoon of soda is a half of a teaspoon. I have a half a teaspoon right here. So I'll put that in here. Again, I want to level that off. So there's my half a teaspoon of soda. And then I need a pinch of salt because it calls for 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I need half of a 1/4, so I need 1/8, which is a pinch. Okay? And we're just going to use that terminology in child development, the pincer grasp. I've got my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm just going to put a pinch of salt in my mixture. Now, it says blend this together. So, blending cream of tartar, flour, soda, and salt together. So I'm just going to give it a little blend. And I'm going to add this to my shortening, sugar, and eggs. And then I'm going to mix those things together. I don't want a flour shower. Okay. So mix those things together. Now, the recipe says that I'm going to shape these into 1-inch balls and put them in into a cinnamon and sugar mixture. So I need to get my cinnamon and sugar mixture. Where did I set it? I guess I didn't get that going yet. That's a cinnamon and sugar mixture for a different recipe. So we're going to get to that. Sorry. All right. If I needed 2 tablespoons of sugar and 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, now I need to half that. So I'm going to have 1 tablespoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Got 2 recipes today that call for cinnamon and sugar. So we're just going to be all into cinnamon and sugar today. Okay. All right. So... okay, I've got a nice looking stiff dough here, so that's what I want. I'm going to just scrape that off of this beater here. Okay. And I'll just scrape that off there. Okay, we've talked about quite a few mixing terms today, and our bonus question for today is about the mixing terms. It's define these terms and put them in order of least aggressive to most aggressive. So you're going to define blend, whip, toss, fold, beat, mix, and stir. Once you do that, then I want you to put them in order from the least aggressive to the most aggressive. Okay? Last week we worked with eggs and we whipped the suckers. We whipped those. So that's just a hint. All right. You can do that. Now, what I want to do is use my cookie baller here. I'm just going to put a scoop of my cookie dough into my, give that a little toss around, go around like that, and then put that on the cookie sheet. Ungreased cookie sheet. Just give it a little toss. Make sure cinnamon sugar gets on all around it. Toss. Okay, so there's some other things that we need to talk about when we talk about recipes. And one of those is, as we're reading the recipe, we need to know what the abbreviations are. So if I look at a recipe and I see the letter C period, I need to know that a C period stands for a cup. Another thing that I need to know is a large T and a small t do not mean the same thing. If you use a large T in place of a small t, you have just tripled your recipe. Okay? So it's important to know that there's a difference between a tablespoon and a teaspoon. The tablespoon is the large T, and the teaspoon is a small t. It's also important to know that 3 teaspoons equals a tablespoon. Okay? So 3 teaspoons is a tablespoon. This little t, SP, sometimes I'll put little TSP, sometimes I'll put a capital T, BP, SP also. All right, now, besides some terms and some equivalents, abbreviations, let's see, what else? We talked about our bonus question. Okay, let's just review. If you needed to measure brown sugar, we've talked about regular sugar, but brown sugar is a little bit different. When you measure brown sugar, you need to pack brown sugar, and I had brown sugar in the next recipe, and you'll see that I packed it into the tablespoon, and it is holding its shape. Okay, last one. Okay, so I will put these in for 10 minutes, and then check them. If I feel like, put my timer on minutes. Okay, and then let's move on to the next recipe. The next recipe is our fun food today, and our fun food today is fruit salsa. Everything we're making today is kind of fun, but our fun food for today is fruit salsa. Now, the reason I'm making this recipe is because Jenna has been begging for this recipe all year long, and I told her I would make it for an FCCLA thing, and so here we are, and I need to make her some fruit salsa. So I've already taken 2 Yellow Delicious apples, 2 kiwi, and a pound of strawberries, and chopped those up. So we have strawberries, kiwi, and our apples. Here's our cinnamon chips, which I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. Move all this stuff over just a little bit. And the sauce for this is some regular sugar. Here's our brown sugar, and you can see that it's holding its shape because we pack brown sugar. And then 2 tablespoons of strawberry preserves. So we're just going to mix those things together, give them a good mix. And this is one of those things that we need to serve cold. So once I get this mixed together, I'm just going to go ahead and put it back in the refrigerator. I should have gotten a way bigger bowl, huh? This is going to take a while to get this all mixed up. So mix, 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 and then put back in the refrigerator, okay? So you want it to serve it cold. Now, the chips that Mr. Osborne has decided that he's not going to learn how to make because he would eat them all day long and be addicted. He said these are quite addictive. The chips, let's go ahead and work on those. Let me show you how to make those. I found that this regular flour tortilla is best for the chips. Instead of like the extra soft or anything like that, just the regular ones are the best. Okay, so I am going to cut these into chip shapes. And let me go ahead and put these all out in a single layer. And then I'm going to turn on my oven. This recipe calls for an oven at 350. So let me just go get that really quick over here. Got my cookies, bake, 350 start. So we're in good shape over here. Let's put that up there. All right. So once you've got your flour tortillas cut into the shapes that you want, you just take some butter spray, and I'm going to get these kind of close together. And you spray those, and then sprinkle that with some cinnamon and sugar mixture. And then you're just going to flip them over. Spray them again. And sprinkle them with some more cinnamon and sugar. And then you put this in the oven for right around 10 minutes. I put it in 10 minutes, and then I kind of stir them around sometimes, and I put them in a little bit longer because I kind of like mine pretty crispy. So put those in for 10 minutes. Put my timer on. Oh, sorry. Okay, there it goes. All right, I'll wash my hands real quick, and then let's just go through a little review before we move on to the next thing. All right, so let's review what we've learned today, because we've talked about a lot of things today. All right, the first thing we talked about was measuring shortenings, okay? So to measure shortenings, we can use the stick method, which is just reading the side of the stick and cutting it in the right place, or the pack method, which is using a dry measuring cup and a rubber scraper and just packing it down in there and leveling it off. And then the water displacement method, which, only I guess if you didn't have anything but a liquid measuring cup, then that would be the thing to do. So let's talk about liquid measuring cups just for a second, because the liquid measuring cup, you notice, is different than the dry measuring cup. The dry measuring cup, we can level things off. The liquid measuring cup, we can't level anything off. We use the liquid measuring cup for things like milk and oil and water, and it has a spout, it has a handle. It's clear because we need to read our liquids at eye level. So we want to bend down and look at it at eye level and see where it is before we know. And then if we had tried to do that with this, it would start spilling before we could really get it at the right level. So dry measuring cups, again, we just level off. Liquid measuring cups, we want to look at eye level. The flour, we use the dipping method, or we can use the sifting method. If you want to use the sifting method, you want to sift it into another bowl and then spoon it into your dry measuring cup and level it off. Eggs. Okay, eggs can be difficult. You saw me go through that whole recipe, and I halved all the recipe. Well, the original recipe called for 2 eggs, so we just used the 1. What if the recipe called for 1 egg? How would you half 1 egg? Well, remember last week that I separated all those eggs so I could have some egg whites? Okay. So we'd separate the egg and just use the egg white. That's one way to half an egg. Or we can take an egg, beat it up into a bowl, and then we know measure it, which 1 large egg typically is 1/4 of a cup, we know that 2 tablespoons is 1/2 of 1/4 of a cup. So we just take out the 2 tablespoons and use the 2 tablespoons. So that's how we would half an egg, because that one is kind of tricky. The brown sugar, remember we want to pack the brown sugar because it needs to stay, in the form. And then powdered sugar. If you happen to need powdered sugar, same thing as dry, but you might have to sift it if there was quite a bit of lumps and things in it. So those are the things that, typically you'll be measuring in the kitchen. We have 3 minutes or so on our cookies, and we have about 7 minutes on our chips. So I'd like to go ahead and go over to our sewing and it's more of a craft kind of thing this week. So our sewing project this week, I want you to use the most advanced skills that you have. This is a choice for your lesson this week. Use the most advanced skills that you can to make a Mother's Day, grandmother, aunt, whoever is special in your life. Mother's Day is like 12 days away. So we're going to make something special for them. And I've got some examples here for you. Probably the easiest one is just paper, okay? We just have paper, and the saying that we're going to use for all of these is, flowers for thee with love from me. So I just simply made some circles out of paper and glued them on there and made it look like a flower. Here we go again. Flowers for thee with love from me. Happy Mother's Day. Okay? You can put some buttons, paint, markers, whatever. Okay, I know you know how to cross stitch. We did some cross stitch in class. This is all hand sewn. The cross stitch I got off the internet, and here we go again. Flowers for thee with love from me, flowers from me, and I just hand stitched together, and it's just a cute little coaster. Okay, this is a wall hanging or a table topper, or you could make it either anything you want. I just gonna probably use it as a table topper, but you could hang it up. And it's sewn on, hand sewn on buttons. I just used a permanent marker to write that on there. Just use the permanent marker to write on the words flowers for thee with love from me. And then it's probably like a 1.5 inch border and a 2.5 inch border sewn around there. And I did machine quilting, free motion quilting on my sewing machine at home. And then we put the binding on. All of you in 7th hour know how to put this binding on. Sew the binding on 2.5 inch strip and sew it on by hand. So everybody's experienced with that. That's in 7th hour anyway. Okay, and then the last one, probably the most advanced skills, is a sewing machine, and we have one in the department that can sew letters. And so I have one at home also, and so I just programmed it to put flowers for thee, flowers for thee, flowers for thee is the outer circle, with love from me, with love from me, with love from me is the inner circle. Then I did a hand applique where you made each of the petals, sewed it onto interfacing, turned it, and then hand stitched it on to the pillow, and then put a rickrack border and then a pocket style backing on it. So that's very advanced. So use your most advanced skill to make those, to make whatever gift that you can for your mom or grandma or whoever that special person is in your life. Okay. Let's see here. Looking pretty good. I'm thinking I want to give them about another minute. They look a little still shiny on top for me. I want to put them in for about 1 more minute. They're smelling fantastic. 1 minute. And let's take a look at our chips while we're at it. Okay, just going to give them a shake. They're looking good. They are not quite as crispy and brown as the other ones, so I'm going to leave them in there. They're supposed to be in there for about 3 more minutes. Okay, let's review one more time. I think we have a couple more minutes. Is that right, Mr. Osborne? So let's review one more time our bonus question. I don't want you to get this if you can. you can definitely do this. Define the terms and then put them in order from the most aggressive or the least aggressive to the most aggressive. And those terms are terms that we've talked about today and we've talked about in the past. Blend, whip, toss, fold, beat, mix, and stir. So that's all I've got. We're going to get these cookies out of here unless anybody has a question in the peanut gallery back there. I think we're finished for today. Okay. Cookies are done, and we're in good shape. The sifting does add air, and it is helps it with the rising process. Yes, so there's some recipes that will call for sifting. You have to sift it because it's adding that air, incorporating air, which is, helping it to rise. So yes, that's a good question. So here are our cookies. We're going to be cinnamoned up around here, guys. Thank you so much for joining us at Sequoia. We appreciate getting to do this, guys. I've been seeing some fantastic things from you, and I appreciate all your hard work. We miss you, and we're looking forward to seeing you next fall. You guys have a fantastic day. Yeah, have a great summer, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. My name's Owen Hosick, agriculture education instructor and FFA advisor here at Sequoyah Public Schools. Hope everybody is doing good. excited about what we're going to talk about today. But before we get to that, if you watch the very first week that we did this, we did a soil experiment, and finally, after 2 weeks of settling, we finally have some clear water up top. We can see our very thin layer of clay there, followed by our silt, and then kind of our granular sand down at the bottom. And so I just kind of wanted to update you guys and show you how that worked out. As far as our actual values, excuse me, as far as the actual values of percentages of different things, they remained pretty much the same. That the clay layer may have gotten just a little bit deeper, but less. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Just show you guys what it looks like when the experiment is all the way done. Today we're going to be talking about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is dairy products. One of my favorite things to do is have a big glass of chocolate milk, and so what we're going to do is talk about kind of the science behind it, what milk is made up of, a little bit of the production, and at the end I'm going to show you guys how to make some ice cream. So between Miss Helbig and myself, you guys will be your sweet tooth will be satisfied over this last hour. Okay, but before we get to the fun stuff, let's talk about kind of some of the some of the terms and philosophies and kind of the whys behind some of the stuff. Okay, so you may ask yourself, what is dairy? Well, dairy is going to be any product made from milk or products of milk, and so there's different components. Probably the two most popular, right, other than just milk itself, will be either cheese or yogurts, and so both of those products are made using milk as the base, and then there's various processes that are done to each to create both of those products. And so milk itself is going to be a liquid produced in the mammary glands of mammals, and so things like cattle, sheep, goats, hogs, giraffes, whatever mammal species, right? Usually they're going to produce some type of milk. And so the purpose of that is to basically provide a clicker that looks like I lost the batteries to. It's not working. It's basically to provide a nutritious supplement for the baby animal, the calf, the lamb, the kid, the puppy, whatever it might be, a nutrient source for them to survive and develop on before their body's ready to start digesting more complex foods. So milk by the numbers, these are from 2018 was the most recent that I can find. Usually every 5 to 10 years, the United States Department of Agriculture does a survey, and so certain industries get hit at different intervals throughout that. And so 2018 was the last milk I could find, but my guess is they're probably going to be pretty close. Okay, so the average American, so maybe this isn't necessarily you. You might be under this number, it might be over this number, but Americans on average are going to have 48.8 pounds of milk per year. And so if you think about, 50 pounds of milk, more or less, I mean, that's a lot of weight. And this number has actually been declining as more health concerns have come across, as people's diets have shifted, really starting 60s, 70s, the milk number of pounds per person has steadily decreased, and that's affected the dairy industry in a lot of different ways. And so they've had to rely on adapting and overcoming some of those different challenges. And so if you're a Parks and Recreation fan, like I was, there was Ron Swanson on there. He had a great quote. He said, "There's two things I can't stand. That's liars and skim milk, and skim milk is just lying about being milk." And so we will get into that. But on average, about 14 pounds of skim milk is consumed per year. That 48 pounds was whole milk, and then about 14 and a half pounds of flavored milks are going to be consumed, and that's going to be your chocolates. If you're one of those people that like strawberry milk, that's not my thing. Maybe it's yours. about 14 and a half pounds per year on average. And so again, some may be more, some may be less, but those are just kind of the averages. Okay, as we look at dairy production states, right? I'm sure you've seen the commercials on television. Maybe you've heard it on the radio or scrolling through the gram. You'll see, happy cows come from California, or Wisconsin has their milk, real cheese or real cows or whatever. I can't think of it at the time, but most people think of California and Wisconsin as the big milk producing states. And by pounds of milk produced, they are first and second. So California produces the most. Thinking back, it's about I'm not going to say the exact number because I can't remember it and I'll get called out on it. So then Idaho, New York, and then Texas. And if you think about all of these different states, aside from California and Texas, so really focusing on Wisconsin, Idaho, and New York, a lot of their ground, right, isn't necessarily maybe the best pasture ground. So whether it's used for poultry production or dairy production, places with very adequate grass, usually that space is utilized for things like beef cattle or maybe some other species of livestock. So you may be wondering to yourself, where does Oklahoma fall in? We are 31st in the nation of dairy production. I believe we just barely outed Nevada as they're 32nd, and so it's a good thing we're beating the desert in dairy production. That's neither here nor there. Historically, Northeast Oklahoma had quite a few dairies. As the dairy industry declined, as Tulsa and the surrounding area grew and become more populated, a lot of that land that was traditional dairy became basically more valuable as subdivisions as it was to be in dairy production. And so as we lose land to urbanization, it affects a lot of different industries, and the dairy industry has definitely been one of those that has been affected. Okay, so milk consists of a bunch of different components, and so you go to the store, right? You get your carton or your bottle or your jug of milk, whatever nomenclature you use, right? And you look on the back and you see, it's got fats, cholesterol, sodiums, carbs, all those fun things. But there's really just a few components that make up milk, and what we're talking about is going to apply pretty much just to milk produced from cattle when we get into the percentages and things. Okay, we have water, lactose or sugar, okay, fat, proteins, vitamins, and minerals, okay? And the actual percentage breakdown, we're going to talk about each of these individually, but the different percentages of each vary from breed to breed of dairy cattle, okay? When we talk about breeds of dairy cattle, the most iconic one is going to be the Holstein, right? So if you close your eyes and you envision a pasture full of beautiful dairy cattle, right? This is probably the one you're going to be thinking of. They're going to be really tall. They're going to be white with all these black spots, and they're going to be the most popular breed in the United States. When it comes to milk production, you are either in quantity or you are in quality. Okay, and the Holstein breed is going to be in the quantity side of things. They're going to produce a lot of milk, but it may not necessarily be the most flavorful or the most desirable as far as taste and flavor and those kinds of things. So the average Holstein dairy cow that's in production is going to produce, on average, and we're talking a lot about averages today, 21,167 pounds of milk per year. So basically, you have a pickup truck in weight of milk being produced by one cow per year. So if you times that by all of the dairy cattle in the United States, that is a lot of milk produced. Okay, their particular product is going to be low in butterfat and protein. We're going to talk about those two components here in more detail here in a second, compared to other breeds. Okay, so if we compare them to one of the other more popular breeds in the dairy industry, okay, that would be the Jersey. Okay, so if you just look at the number, they're going to produce about 16,000 pounds of milk per year. So significantly less. However, the milk that they do produce is going to be higher in butterfat and higher in protein than that produced by the Holstein. Okay, and that butterfat component or the fat component of milk is what's going to give and taste. Just like if you go to the store and you're looking for the best steak, right? You see one that's got that big white fat ring around the outside of it, that cap. That's going to taste better than if you have one that is just barely a little bit of marbling and barely a little bit of fat on the edges. That's what's going to give it its flavor. Same thing with our milk. Okay, back to the components. About 87 to 88% of milk is going to be water. Okay, so that's what allows it to flow. That's what that's basically what makes it into its liquid. All those other components are going to be solids, so those are diluted by the water and allow it basically to flow through the mammary system of the dairy cow. So one thing that is important, if you have any animal, whether it's if you have a schnauzer that just had puppies, or you have a hog, or a cow, right? Those water requirements are going to be very high because they're going to be using a lot, basically, to produce that milk. Okay, the other component, and one of the components that can cause some people some issues, is lactose. And so lactose is basically the sugar or the carbohydrate that is in the milk itself, and it makes up about 5% of the total composition. Okay, so lactose is actually two different sugar molecules bound together, okay, galactose and glucose. And so I know this is what you're worried about at home. Well, how do I know which is which? Because when you're sitting there late at night, you're done looking through TikTok, you're like, I'm going to study some sugar molecules. Okay, the one, so all these OHs, we have oxygen, hydrogen bonded. Okay, the one that has the extra water molecule attached to our OH is going to be our glucose. Okay, I know at home you were worried about that. Okay, the fat portion of the milk itself is going to make up about 3%. This is what's going to give its flavor, and like we talked about before, it can vary from breed to breed. Also, the diet that particular animal is on can affect some of the fat content of the milk itself. Okay, proteins are another large component. Okay, about 3% of the total composition. 9 essential amino acids come from milk. So, if you're like me and you're just working out constantly and just getting huge, there's a little bit of sarcasm in that. Okay, a lot of people take milk as a post workout supplement because it has that protein and those essential amino acids that are needed to be able to develop and build muscle. Okay, the two major proteins are going to be whey and casein. I'm sure you've seen like big tubs of like whey protein, right? And so it's derived from milk. So if somebody has a milk allergy, they would want to stay away from some of those products. Okay, a lot of vitamins and minerals as well. And this is an important time. I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to have to speed through this. Okay, so if we look at if we don't trip over a microphone, if we look at our, Oak Farms Dairy doesn't sponsor this either. If we look at our gallon or half gallon here of milk, on the back we see whole milk, vitamin D, grade A, pasteurized, homogenized, and then a whole bunch of things. Under the ingredients, it says milk and then vitamin D3. And so that's usually can be found on the front or the back of the label. One of the vitamins and minerals that is in some milk but is not naturally in milk is vitamin D. The process of adding vitamin D is called fortification. So if you see fortified milk, that's basically all it's talking about, is that we've added vitamin D into that particular product. Okay, so you may say, well, why are we doing this? And there's several different nutritional reasons. Vitamin D helps with your immune system and some other essential functions that occur within the human body. Okay, but that process is called fortification. Two of those other terms that I was hoping to go a little bit more in depth about, but due to time constraints, we're just going to hit them briefly here, is pasteurization and homogenization. So homogenization or homogenized milk is basically, there's some processes that happen to it, and it spreads, okay, all of these components out evenly throughout the entire container. So if left to its own devices, if we had non-homogenized product, the little pieces of fat would start to stick together and collect, and you would have one sip of milk would taste different than the next and the next and the next, because they wouldn't all be evenly distributed. And so through that process of homogenization, those milk particles are broken up very, very tiny to where they're not going to form together either at all or as quickly. So you want homogenized milk, and that is a quality assurance measure taken by dairy producers to make sure that every drink you have tastes exactly the same as the last, or will taste the same as the next. The other word that's on there is pasteurization. I'm sure there's some fantastic science teachers out there, either on YouTube or maybe you've heard about it in class, that talk about the process of pasteurization, and basically that's going to heat up the milk. That's going to heat up the milk to a certain temperature for a short period of time, and the purpose of that is to destroy some of the different bacteria and things that could be found within the milk, and that is there to help keep you, the consumer, safe. Okay. The controversy in the ag world surrounding milk is raw milk versus pasteurized and homogenized. Pasteurization is there to protect the consumers, right? The reason why we don't just boil it is because we don't want to destroy all those fats and proteins and ruin some of those vitamins and minerals. We want that source to be there and undisturbed, but we also want to preserve the quality of the milk. Okay, so one of my favorite dairy products is going to be ice cream. Okay, and what I'm going to do today is show you kind of the quick and dirty way to be able to make it at home. This is one of my favorite things to do, and you can do it probably with things you already have at home, so you don't have to go out to the store or wherever it is you collect. You don't have to go out and mine your own salt. So basically, it's real simple. We're gonna need milk, 2 cups. Okay, I like to use whole milk because it has more fats in it, and it gets a little bit better of a flavor. You could use chocolate milk or strawberry milk for different flavors as well. You're gonna need a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. Yes, that is a lot of sugar. Trust me, it'll taste better if you use 1/2 cup, and don't try to skimp here. There's no paleo ice cream, not in my house, anyways. Okay, and then you're gonna need 1 of vanilla extract. You're gonna need some rock salt. You can use table salt, but you're just gonna need a lot of it, and then you need some ice. Okay, so how this is going to work as we hurry through this, and we'll try to talk about some of the different percentages of milk here. Okay. You're going to take basically a quart-size bag like so, okay? Hopefully you paid attention to Ms. Helbig before this, and you know all about how to use your measuring cups and different measuring devices. So I'm going to take 2 cups of milk, and I'm going to try not to spill it all over the table. Okay, there's 1. Getting dangerous here, going one-handed. All right. There's our 2nd cup. Okay, we're then going to take some granulated sugar, and we are going to get half a cup, and then we're going to spill a bunch all over the table that we'll have to clean up quickly. Okay, and then we're going to take 1 tablespoon, and make sure it's a tablespoon, of vanilla extract, and that's going to kind of color the milk just a little bit, but it's going to give it a lot of good flavor. Okay, so it's important here that we try to get as much of the air out of this bag as we can, and so use whatever method you're most comfortable with. Okay, and then you need to secure the bag. So make sure that it is very secure. Okay, I'm going to double bag it, and the reason for that is if this tears, I don't want salt getting into my solution, or I don't want the milk spilling out all over the floor and then getting yelled at by your mother or spouse or whoever is around you at the time. Okay, then I'm going to take a gallon bag. I'm going to put quite a bit of ice into it. Chris, how are we doing on time? Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to fill the bottom of that with some ice. I'm going to put the bag of milk in there. Milk and other ingredients, I should say. I'm then going to put some more ice in there. Okay, and then you may be thinking to yourself, the ingredients list said you needed salt and you didn't put any in the bag. And that is correct. Okay, we're going to take our salt and we're going to mix it in with the ice. And so, again, kind of some of the sciencey stuff is that the salt is going to lower the freezing temperature of the water in there. So some of our ice is going to melt, but it's basically going to get below 32 degrees. Okay, and so once we get to this point, you should have something like this. Again, secure the bag. You don't want ice going everywhere. You don't want making a mess. Okay, and then you're just going to shake it for as long as your little brother or sister will before their hands get cold. Then you have to switch, and then you actually have to finish it out. So what'll happen is, as you shake this, and we probably don't have enough time to actually do it on camera, or I'm sure that shaking sound sounds really great through your audio as well. That the milk mixture that we have in there is going to start to solidify. 5 to 8, 10 minutes or so. It's kind of more of a art than a science. But once that's there, then you're going to be able to enjoy your ice cream. Okay. If you have any questions about that, there is a ton. I was going to say 1,000. I don't know the actual number. There is a ton of videos out there. I found this particular extravagant recipe on the Food Network. They did their own. They had their own like at-home ice cream kind of deal. You can get. They make mixers, and you still use ice and salt and some of the other components that we used, but instead of shaking the bag, it does it for you manually. So if you think about ice cream production on a large scale, the process is going to be pretty much exactly the same, only it's going to be a lot bigger. We're going to incorporate machines to do all of the shaking for you. This is my Taylor Swift reference here to the Shake It Off video. Hope you caught that. Okay, a couple more things. Well, we got some time. Okay, here we have whole milk. We talked about skim milk earlier. I'm sure you've seen 2%, 1% milk in the store, maybe in your refrigerator, or whatever your preference might be. And so back to the Parks and Rec quote. So skim milk is not just watered down milk. So what happens is when it's all collected, it's put into a big vat or container, and all of the fat is then removed. So you are left with all the components that we talked about other than the fat portion, okay? And then fat is added back in, depending on what type of milk is being produced, to a certain percentage of weight. So your 2% milk, okay, is not necessarily that whole that container contains 2% milk. It's that it's 2% fat, okay, by volume. Same thing with 1%, right? That's going to be just a little bit less. And then skim milk, okay, is going to have all of that fat, or the vast majority of that fat is going to be removed, okay, during that process. When we do this particular or talk about this particular topic in class, some of the kind of the questions that we get, well, how long does it take to go from, Farmer Joe's cow out in a pasture to our container of milk that we're going to buy at the supermarket. And so that can depend on a couple of different factors. Some of those will be, one, proximity of the milk processing facility to the particular grocery store you are shopping at. But for the most part, it's going to be about 2 to 3 days. Okay, so we're talking coming out of cow, going into a big shipping truck, going to the processor, pasteurization, homogenization, fortification, a lot of cations here, just like I need a vacation. But all those things are going to happen, okay, and then it's bottled, shipped to the store, all in about 2 to 3 days, okay. On this particular product here, it says best buy 9/20, so I bought it today, so it gives me a little while to be able to enjoy this delicious treat. Milk needs to be refrigerated at roughly 40 degrees or under. If you get over that, or the warmer you get, the more active decomposition can happen, especially if it's exposed to oxygen. The process of pasteurization does not eliminate all of the different bacteria. So even if this is sealed, anaerobic bacteria can break it down. Okay. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me, owen.hossack@sequoiaeagles.net. Miss Bacon, do we have any questions on there? Nope. Okay. I hope everybody is doing good. We will be back one more time next week. I'm excited about that. We'll have some cool hands-on things that you can do at home. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I appreciate this opportunity. It allows me to get out of the house and virtually kind of spend some time with you guys doing what I love, and that's teaching. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Good morning. Welcome back to middle school science classroom. My name is Mr. Paul, and I will be your teacher again today at the wonderful Sequoyah Public Schools. Today we're going to move into energy. We had a small video to start with, but we had some technical difficulties, so we're going to move on past that, and that'll be okay. So the first thing we have to figure out is potential and kinetic energy. What are they? Well, we'll find out soon. Okay. So there's different forms of potential energy. You have gravitational, which you think of an apple falling out of the tree, Newton's law. Dropping a basketball, especially in your mom's house when she gets mad. Gravitational potential energy right there. Means it has the potential to have energy. Then you have elastic energy. When you shoot that rubber band across the classroom when you're told not to, or you're even jumping on the trampoline right now at home, that's elastic potential energy. Then you have magnetic potential energy. I am out of the view. My apologies. Okay. Then you have chemical energy, which is a wide variety of different ways of doing it, which we'll talk about in a minute. Electroelastic energy, which is one of your probably favorite ones, is when you're running through the house and you're pulling your feet across the carpet and you run up and shock your sister. That's elastic energy right there. And then we have nuclear energy, which we have several different types that we'll talk about when it comes to nuclear energy. And then the opposite of potential energy is kinetic energy, the actual doing. So we have mechanical, which you're going to see a lot in turbines, fans, movement, which we're going to talk about when we go over to the roller coaster in a second. Then you have electrical, which is probably one of your favorite. So you can plug up your iPads, your PS4s, and all those electronics. Thermal, anything that produces heat, so you can cook your food, have a campfire, anything along those lines. Your electromagnetic, your lights. And then one of the ones we forget about the most is sound, which we're going to have a demonstration in a little bit to show exactly what sound can do. So, forms of energy. What is energy? It's to be able to do work. So a good example of saying this is when your mom makes you go outside and do some yard work. You go out there and you sit there and stand and you look at sticks when you're supposed to be picking them up. You have potential to pick up those sticks. When you're actually moving to pick up those sticks, you have kinetic energy. You're actually doing the work. So the majority of energy that originates from the sun in the form of fusion. There are many different forms of energy, which we just talked about. And the easiest strategy to remember this is Mr. Sense. Now, we're not going to go over all of these, but we're going to discuss them soon. So you have mechanical, radiant, chemical, electrical, nuclear, and thermal. So the video that I had earlier, before we get into all the way into mechanical, is we had a roller coaster. Now, we all are ready to get out of the house, and I figured we'd start with that, but technical issues will be aside. So the best way to demonstrate this is simple. So me and my son love to create and build things. So one of the things that we build is a marble roller coaster. So what you're going to do, simply just watch. So when the marble is at the highest point, it has the most potential energy. And as it moves down the track, it's going to start converting the potential energy into kinetic energy. Now, if this track was all the way down at a very sharp angle, the kinetic energy would pick up faster and the potential would go away. Now, as it goes all the way down, kinetic energy picks up, potential decreases until it gets to the bottom, where it has little potential energy. Now, mechanical energy has to do with the position and how it moves. In saying that, there's also different forms of mechanical energy. First one I think of is spinning gears. This is the one that we always show. So on the back side of this marble roller coaster, we have sets of gears. Now what these gears do is they rotate to allow to pick up an object so that it can take it to the top and drop the marble down to start the process over. So mechanical energy has potential and kinetic energy. It's a combination of the two. Another great example of this is if you go towards Kansas or out west, you see a whole bunch of windmills. We use windmills to create energy, clean energy, renewable energy. Another one is when you're riding your bicycle out with your friends. Those gears, you're pushing to help make it easier for you to go faster. So you're using your mechanical energy as your body, and then using the gears to produce more kinetic energy, which is easier on you. Then we have radiant energy, your lights. You have different types. You cannot see these. They travel in waves, just like another one that we're about to talk about. But before we go into that, your television, your gaming systems, Wi-Fi, all of those fundamental things that you're using probably every day, especially if you're doing virtual learning also. Traffic lights also use this. And your favorite one, cell phone. Give me a sec. Oh, hello? Sorry, give me 1 second, guys. Yes. Okay. That was your other teachers. They're making sure you're staying up with your work. This is a form of electromagnetic energy right here, though. Every time you use that cell phone to send messages or receive them, make phone calls, maybe your boyfriend or girlfriends, or maybe your crushes, any of that. Electromagnetic energy, or your radiant energy, I'm sorry. Then we have chemical energy, which is stored in energy in the molecules, which is potential energy, as we discussed earlier, until it has a chemical reaction and creates kinetic energy. Now, involved in chemical reactions take place, forms of potential energy occurs because it's in the bonds of the atoms, and then when the chemical reaction occurs, you have the energy. So, great example is food. Everyone in here ran to get some cookies earlier, so they've already started this process. They're breaking down those chemical bonds in food to create energy for their body. Coal. In Oklahoma, we use a lot of coal, natural gas, and oil. We kind of run on it. So that is also a form of chemical energy. And then anytime you store it in batteries, you have potential energy. So one way of showing this is, you've probably done this before, is baking soda and vinegar. If you haven't, you're about to see something new. But to show the change of energy in the chemical reaction, we're going to use vinegar, baking soda, and a balloon. Lovely sound. Okay, so I'm not going to measure anything out. Just remember, the more baking soda and vinegar you use, the better the chemical reaction is going to occur. You have a base in the baking soda, and then you have an acid in the vinegar, which is going to cause a chemical reaction. But we're going to focus on what comes out of it first. What am I doing? I need that back up there. I got to be quick about this one. Okay, so if you noticed, the gas pushed up and caused the balloon to inflate. But why did this occur? Because a chemical reaction took place, and the base and the acid reacted together to create carbon dioxide. Now, there's also another thing. If you've ever done elephant toothpaste, which we did this year in my class, you'll notice that the reaction causes a lot of heat. Well, in this one, it does not. It actually becomes very cold. This is an endothermic reaction. It actually pulls in the heat, creating a cold vibe out of the vinegar and solution of baking soda. And saying that, though, I remove it, all the carbon dioxide gas is gone, and then I'll put the balloon back on to show that the chemical reaction actually caused the gas to expand. No more carbon dioxide in the balloon. Okay, so that's one simple way of showing a chemical reaction. There's a lot of other ones. Like I said, elephant toothpaste would be a great example of this. Okay, it does take a few more ingredients, especially right now with all of the salon shops being shut down. Actually, they just opened back up to get some of the chemicals needed to use in it. So the next one that we're going to talk about is electrical energy. Like I said earlier, this is all of your devices. How we're running the computer system right now, all of our lighting, all offers electrical energy charges. So electricity uses many different objects in our daily lives. Electricity fits in our homes since the 1800s. Examples of this would be lamps, electrical outlets, and chargers. And like I said earlier, static electricity is one of them too. But since we don't have carpet in here, and I'm not going to run around in my socks and try to generate it, I'm going to do it a different way. Now, if I can learn how to tie correctly. So what's another way? I'm assuming we all have played with balloons before. And yes, I have an abundance of hair right now, so this will work out perfectly. So all you have to do is rub it back and forth, making the electrons and the positive neutrons face back and forth, creating static electricity as my hair goes up. Now, hopefully this will be cut tomorrow since the shops are back open, but that's just a way of showing that there's different forms of electrical energy currents, especially when you can't see them. Okay, so our next one is nuclear energy. Actually, 10% of the world's energy comes from this. There's good things that occur from it and bad things. One of the number one things that you have, as I said earlier, was the sun. Nuclear fusion is occurring. If you go outside and enjoy and soak up that sun, you'll actually be having some nuclear energy upon yourself. So, nuclear fission, on the other hand, is splitting of atoms. We use that in nuclear facilities to create and generate clean, substantial energy, whereas fusion, like I said, was part of the sun. So examples of this would be fusion for the sun, power plants for fission, atomic bombs, which we're not going to focus on the atomic bomb portion. We're actually going to focus on the nuclear power plants portion. So one way of showing you how to do this is, so in power plants, even though the technology is continuing to get better every day, since a lot of the technology that is outdated, so more and more nuclear power plants are actually being created. I read an article the other day that said 136 new ones are being created this year, or actually informed to create. So how it works, though, is you have a fuel source, uranium typically, and it goes down in a fuel rod with a couple other things, and then you have large amounts of neutrons that hit it. So this uranium rod is in the middle of a water substantial, and it heats up the water. That's actually how we create the energy from it. Now, earlier I said that there's positives from it, and there's a lot of negatives too. So a few of the negatives would be if we had a nuclear disaster. Japan had one in 2011, I believe, or 2012. And then one of my favorite ones that my teacher right across from me likes to talk about is the Chernobyl disaster. So what happened there is the core actually came out of control down. So that's also one of the negatives that occurs with nuclear energy. So the other part of it, though, is as a byproduct. So when the nuclear core is in the middle, it also sits and creates. So I'm just going to sit there and let it float. Miss Bacon? Yeah. Will you grab those scissors that I forgot over there? Yeah, those will work. So what happens is when the uranium rod is in there, it also produces a byproduct because the water actually becomes radioactive. So it's almost like breaking another glow stick and it melting down in there. Now, as it goes in, this is the byproduct that occurs. Now, the problem with this is we can't use it after this. Now, a lot of countries are starting to try to use this byproduct and reuse it in the fuel source, but it's very hard to do. So what we have to do is we actually have to take this radioactive water or byproduct and we bury it miles within the earth because it's very radioactive. So, again, it produces a lot of clean, substantial energy, but two tremendous negatives that can occur from it would be a nuclear disaster and the byproduct of the radiation. So that's just an example of that as we go through it. So another one is thermal energy. Perfect. Earlier we used it to cook cookies. They smell delicious, by the way. And then it also heats up the atoms and particles to move faster. So earlier we had an endothermic reaction, which actually cooled it. But when I said the elephant toothpaste actually causes heat to speed up the particles. Now, hot, more, cold, less, as I just discussed earlier with the two experiments. So, iron heats up, a toaster, and fire. So, another example is just simply this. Simple match. That's all we're going to use. That is a chemical reaction that occurred. Have heat that is produced from it. Now, if we're not in my room, I don't want to set off any fire extinguishers, so we're going to get rid of that real quick. But that's just a simple example of how that chemical reaction occurs, and it can also produce a heat, which we use. So again, when we burn coal, one of the processes of that is heating up a source to produce electricity. Same with the nuclear fission portion in a power plant. So sound energy. Energy that vibrates matter. Sound can travel through solids, liquids, and gases. So examples of this, your blowhorn. So when you're all out at the football games and basketball games, and unfortunately the baseball and soccer, that is not occurring right now. When you're out there making all that loud noise to cheer on your team, that's part of it. That 7 o'clock alarm clock that goes off in the morning that sometimes we dread to hit makes noise to wake you up. And then obviously, as earlier we were talking about Taylor Swift, got to have our music produced to the radio. So another little example of showing you this actually works is we're going to use some wrap, any kind of container. Since I'm terrible at ripping off of that thing, I'm just going to cut it. And what you're going to do is you're going to put this over any type of bowl, container, anything that you can make it nice and tight. The point of this is to get it as tight as possible. Okay. So the next thing is you want to put a substance on there that's not too heavy or too dense that you can put on and make it move. Now, I just crushed up some candy earlier because I forgot my sprinkles at home. So, like I said, you can use anything. You can even use dirt if you wanted. That'd be pretty easy to do. So, as I get it, you notice that I can make it move through vibrations. My actual contact with it, I can blow it and make it move. But I want to do something with sound. So, what I'm going to do is all I'm going to do is take a pan, which makes noise, and you're going to get up near it, and you're going to hit it. But if you notice, I'm not making contact at all with the container or the table. All you have is the actual sound waves that are occurring right now and causing that to vibrate. The more I do it, the harder it gets. You can also do this with different jars, maybe deeper containers to bang up against to help make the noise so you can actually make the bigger substances bounce a little bit. Just a few little different things to do. So that's one way of doing it. Another great example of showing sound waves is filling up cups full of different types of water, and they'll actually produce a different sound from it because of the actual container water in the size of the glass or the shape of the glass. So checkpoint. I got 5 questions to kind of go with this. So if you're in my class right now for my virtual learning, one of my assignments throughout the week is to do an RSU assignment and go with it, answer some questions to go around it. Good way to get some actual knowledge outside of the classroom and from a lot of different teachers. So question number 1, what form of energy is produced by musical instruments? Let's think about this. Sound, correct? We just talked about it. If you use your musical instrument, you're going to make a beautiful sound, especially if you listen to the YouTube video of our band playing. Awesome sound. Now, question number 2. Identify and describe 3 different forms of energy found within this room. So in this room, the room that I'm in currently, like I said earlier, you had an amazing teacher show you how to cook these awesome snickerdoodle cookies. She had to use the type of energy for that. She had to heat them. So she used thermal energy. Well, we have lights going on in here. There's radiant energy producing right now. And then, of course, my smart board is playing, and it has to have electrical energy. Those are just a couple different types of energy. Question number 3. Is it possible for an object to use or contain more than one form of energy? Did I give an example of this? Yes, with the match. You have chemical energy, which produces thermal energy. That's 2 different forms. Your phone, also the same thing. You're going to have electrical energy in there, electromagnetic energy. You're going to use different forms off of one item. So question number 4. What forms of energy are used by a flashlight? Depends on the flashlight, right? If you have battery power in it, if you have batteries in it, you're going to have potential, electrical, and radiant, because it's going to produce a light. Now, I also have a few in my classroom over there, which we can't really get to right now, but we have a few that you actually have to shake to produce the energy within it, which also is electromagnetic because it has ports in there that you brought up and down with the magnets. Pause it. So it has multiple forms just in one flashlight. So depending on the flashlight you use will depend on what forms you have. So question 5. Which form of energy do you believe is the most important for survival and why? 5 minutes? Oh, that's wrong. I was actually hurrying because I thought that was okay. So this one's up to you. Now, again, depending on what you think will be survival. Now, for me, I like chemical or thermal just because I like to have a nice hot house when I'm home in the winter, and I like to cook my food. So those would be 2 really important things for me. But if you would say lived in a country like India, you might say that nuclear energy is more important because a substantial amount of their actual power comes from that. And especially earlier when I said that the world's producing about 150 new power plants connected to nuclear energy, India is actually producing about 40 of those because they actually have a very large population and they need it. So that was the end of my PowerPoint, which we had a roller coaster video to go with it at the beginning just to kind of liven things up and get us started. But in saying that, technical issues didn't work. So that'll be okay. So what I would like you to do is around your house, see what different types of energy is being used. Maybe even have your mom or dad find some YouTube videos online and construct some new energy sources that you do yourself. Figure out just from new sources of what they're actually producing. So if you create elephant toothpaste at home, what's going on? What is it producing? What is it using? If you're going to create these, make sure you have a parent at home. Make sure you are always very clean. Because earlier, like I said, especially if you're using like the glow sticks that I was using earlier, you do not want to get this anywhere. If you get this where it stains, it's not a very good thing to use. So, I don't got much more to say. That's about it. How much more time do I got? That's all he told you? So, huh? 2.5 minutes. Okay. Well, unfortunately, that's all I got today. We had a few technical issues to start, which unfortunately didn't start our video off the right way. But we got one more week next Tuesday. So, especially my students, send me some emails or post on our Google Classroom on what we should do next week so we can entertain for the last and final shot of the RSU TV for me, for middle school science. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Enjoy this beautiful weather after today. Get outside. Enjoy that nuclear energy. Have a great day.